spine-chilling tales of haunting rainy nights. 60 terrifying dark drives revealed. Volume 2. The rain fell like a curtain, muffling the world outside Sarah's diner on this eerie night. As she scrubbed down the tables, the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the glass sent shivers down her spine. Something was off in this dark suburban town. The cracked sidewalks, the peeling paint, they had turned into a ghost town. Shadows lingered where families had once thrived, hiding secrets that twisted her gut. Just when she thought she could breathe, a deep chill rippled through the air, teasing her senses. Climbing into her old car, a rust bucket she could barely afford, unease washed over her. The flickering streetlights barely pierced the thick mist that clung to the road. Was that a figure watching her? She shook her head, trying to convince herself it was just her imagination. With a forced breath, she turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed, then sputtered. She couldn't shake the feeling that something malicious was lurking just out of sight. The tension clung to her skin as she drove away from the diner. As she made her way down deserted roads, her heart raced. Each turn set off a new alarm in her mind. The engine groaned as fog rolled across the street like a serpent. When it finally wheezed to a stop, the night swallowed her whole. Her phone, that lifeline she had taken for granted, lay dead in her pocket, reminding her of her isolation. Panic surged within her. She was alone, stranded on a road that felt more a tomb than a passage. Then she saw him, an ominous figure materializing from the shadows near the abandoned school. Thoughts of local lore flooded her mind. Strange disappearances, whispered warnings, an entity haunting these streets. Instinct urged her to flee, but the twisted threads of her community echoed her son's name, begging her to find safety for him. Was it safe to trust the familiar faces of neighbors now lined with secrets? Dodging potholes, she navigated the desolation that around her felt suffocating. Every pulse of adrenaline ratcheted up her fear. The figure crept closer, his outline sharpened by flickering lamplight. Sarah's thoughts raced. Was it really him? Could he be the link in a chain that had her son's babysitter knee-deep in something sinister? It clawed at her reason. Adrenaline rushed through her veins as she connected those dots that made her skin crawl. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue.
Her heart pounded like a war drum as fear gripped her. The shadow loomed larger, a reminder of how quickly safety could slip away. What if he wasn't just a stranger? A memory flashed back, threads of betrayal she had once overlooked, now wrapped around her thoughts. The figure moved even closer, and she could see his eyes glinting like shards of ice, cold, predatory, waiting. Sarah's breath hitched as the engine sputtered back to life, desperately begging her to escape. With her heart racing and her hands trembling, she wrestled with the wheel, urgency coursing through her. But would she make it home? As she sped toward the last turn before her street, the rain grew heavier, thrumming against the metal roof like drums calling for a reckoning. The figure faded into the storm behind her, leaving dread pooling in her stomach. Had she just left behind something worse than she could comprehend? Just beyond the veil of rain loomed her home, yet a haunting question lingered. What awaited her in the shadows of her own neighborhood? As Sarah pulled into her driveway, her heart thudded like a war drum against her ribs. The familiar outline of her home loomed in the night, but it felt foreign, cloaked in dark possibilities. The rain battered against her windshield, transforming her sanctuary into a menacing silhouette. She could barely breathe, each inhale tasting of fear, of something lurking just behind her. Panic swirled within, but she kept it suppressed. She needed to think. The figure had vanished into the storm, but a question gnawed at her. Had she really escaped danger, or only delayed the inevitable? With trembling fingers, she picked up her phone, willing it to light up. Nothing. It lay cold and dead, a stark reminder of her isolation. isolated from help, from the truth. Stepping out of the car, she glanced over her shoulder. The street behind her felt haunted, shadows dancing teasingly just out of view. Each step toward the front door felt like crossing into a lion's den, where she couldn't be sure of what waited inside. Her best friend, Laura, was supposed to still be inside. Only Laura had gone missing last week, and her son had been agitated since. All too familiar, a whispered warning echoed in her mind. Don't trust anyone. Mind racing, she swallowed hard, steeled herself, and pushed the front door open. It creaked ominously, the sound echoing through the cool darkness. Laura, her voice cracked, the syllables trembling as they left her lips. No response, just silence. She stepped inside, her pulse thrumming louder than the rain outside. The familiar sense of home only heightened her unease, a blend of yesterday's dinner and the mustiness of old wood. The world around her began to blur, thoughts spiraling. What if that figure had been searching for her? What if he had already been inside? Instinct screamed at her to turn and run, but she forced her feet to carry her deeper into the house.
The living room was empty, the television flickering in the corner, displaying static, a ghostly reminder of a world untouched. "Eli?" she called, her voice rising in urgency. Her son should have been asleep by now. The thought twisted in her stomach. What if he was in danger? The stairs loomed before her, dark and foreboding. Each step felt like she was descending into an abyss. She clutched the banister, her knuckles whitening as she glided up to creaking wood. The hallway stretched out, a shadowy tunnel leading to Eli's room. As she approached, the door stood ajar, whispering promises of warmth and safety. She nudged the door open slowly, the hinges protesting under the strain. Eli's bed was empty. Panic clawed at her throat, and for a moment she stood frozen, taking in the desolate scene. A rumpled bedspread, toys sprawled across the floor. The shadows in the corners seemed to grow darker, twisting her fears into something tangible. As she turned to leave, she noticed something on the floor, a small, crumpled piece of paper. She knelt to pick it up, the words scrawled in a hurried, uneven hand sending a chill down her spine. "I can't keep him safe. They're watching." A noise behind her froze her blood. A soft creak from the bedroom window made every hair on her body stand on end. She spun around just in time to catch a glimpse of movement, a figure slipping away, melting into the darkness outside, leaving her alone with her racing heart and dread-filled thoughts. Was it him? Was he the one threatening her son? Sarah took a shaky breath, and just as she did, footsteps echoed down the hall, heavy, deliberate, heading straight for her. She stood there, fearful and resolute, as the footsteps approached. She had to make a choice now, run or confront what lingered in the dark. The choice echoed in her mind. Was she ready to face whatever had invaded her home and her life? Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, and Sarah's mind raced in circles. The heavy thuds drew closer, each one a reminder of the danger closing in. "Eli!" she screamed, her voice wavering, ricocheting off the walls of emptiness. The air thickened with unshed tears and choking fear. She glanced toward the open door, the fleeting shadows outside beckoning her. But was her escape truly beyond that threshold, or would it lead her into the arms of the very thing she feared? The footsteps drew nearer, and with them, the weight of dread pressed against her chest. In a split second of clarity, she pivoted back to the bedroom. She couldn't just wait to be found. She had to fight, to protect her son. The closet. The thought sparked a flicker of resolve within her. Barely taking a breath, she dashed across the room, her heart thundering like a rapid drumbeat in her ears. She squeezed into the closet, the cool air prickling her skin. It was cramped, but the darkness offered a shroud of safety. The wooden hanger sliced into her arm, but she didn't care.
She held her breath and pressed herself against the wall, hoping the shadows would conceal her. Footsteps entered the bedroom, slow, measured, deliberate. She strained to hear over the sound of her own heart. The floorboards creaked under heavy weight. An unsettling silence enveloped the room, hanging like fog. "Sarah." The voice was low and raspy, chilling her to the core. It was not Eli. The recognition made her skin crawl. She recognized the voice. It belonged to someone she once trusted. "I know you're here. I can smell your fear." Her breath hitched in her throat. It pierced through her resolve. How could he have found her so quickly? Had he been watching her all along? Every muscle tensed. She wanted to scream, but no sound escaped. The pounding of her heart echoed in her ears, drowning out his voice. "Just come out," he coaxed mockingly, the unrelenting tempo of his footsteps circling the room. "We can end this together." Sarah wanted to laugh, but it turned into a strangled sob stuck in her throat. She could feel the dampness of her own panic slipping down her neck. What did he mean by together? The word dripped with something sinister, like honey laced with poison. He stopped, standing between her and the only exit. "I know where Eli is. You should have listened," he said, the tone devoid of any compassion. "You're not safe, and neither is he. They'll find both of you." A sickening realization washed over Sarah. A part of her knew that beneath those words lay the terrifying truth. Not only was she in danger, but Eli, too, her sweet boy, was at risk, perhaps already lost. "Let him go!" she shouted, a desperate rush of strength fueling her voice. "You're sick! You need help!" A low chuckle ruptured the tense air as he took a step toward her side of the room. "Help! Oh, Sarah, you've already made your choice, and now it's time to face the consequences." The closet door loomed tempting yet terrifying, her lifeline dwindling by the second. She needed to distract him, to create a moment of freedom. As she inched back, a pile of clothes tumbled, hitting the floor, and the figure stopped, spinning around. What was that? He turned sharply, scanning the room, the predator focused on the slightest noise. Heart-racing, Sarah seized the moment. With a sudden lunge, she pushed against the closet door, muscles straining as she burst out and collided with him. But the chaos worked against her. He was heavier, stronger. They struggled, grappling in the doorway like fighters caught in a wrestling match, sanity slipping through her fingers. The flicker of a light caught her attention, a brief beam cutting through the dark. Was someone outside? Could it be Eli? Panic surged anew, charging her movements as she fought against his grasp. Then, the light vanished. A cold realization struck her like a dagger. If she lost this battle... "Sarah!" A terrified, far-off voice echoed, and her stomach churned. "Eli!"
In that moment, she felt the grip tighten, and she screamed. Would she find her son before it was too late? In the pitch-black shadows of her home, every second was a war, every breath a gamble. And Sarah knew one thing for sure. The true nightmare was just beginning. The impact sent them sprawling, two bodies crashing into the floor, the room erupting into chaos. Sarah's instincts kicked in, her desperation clawed at her heart, urging her to fight. She rolled onto her back, gasping for breath, eyes darting wildly for anything to use as a weapon. The dim light filtering through the curtains cast twisted shadows on the walls, creating phantom shapes that danced around the edges of her vision. "Get off me!" she shouted, scrambling to her feet. But he was faster, lunging at her, a wild, feral glare in his eyes. She threw a wild punch, connecting with his jaw, and he staggered back, momentarily dazed. "Fighting won't save you," he sneered, wiping a drop of blood from the corner of his mouth, a twisted smile spreading across his face. "You should have stayed hidden. You should have stayed scared." But for the first time, fear was met with something else, a surge of anger and a flicker of hope. She couldn't fail, not now, not when Eli needed her. The sound of his distant voice fueled her sanity, bouncing around the corners of her mind like a pinball, ricocheting hope and dread in equal measure. "Eli!" she cried out again, this time more forceful. "I'm coming for you, I swear!" "Your son is lost," he hissed, moving toward her again, hands outstretched like talons. It seemed he thrived on her fear, feeding off her panic. "He's just another pawn in our game." Sarah shifted, adrenaline silencing the terror. She noticed the dresser in the corner, the glass of a picture frame glimmering in the dim light. It sparked an idea. Without thinking, she lunged toward the dresser, grabbing the frame and twisting it in her hands. "You want to play?" she hissed, raising the shard of glass, its edge slicing the air. "You don't know who you're messing with." His eyes flickered with interest, amusement dancing on his lips. "You think you can harm me with that? It's just glass, fragile like you." "Fragile," she spat, swinging the makeshift weapon in a wide arc. It caught him on the forearm, and he recoiled, shock replacing his bravado for just a heartbeat. "You've underestimated me." I felt the trembling in my legs, sweat beating on my forehead, but I couldn't stop. Eli was out there, and every moment mattered. "I will find him," she promised, stepping back, using the furniture for support. He lunged again, but this time Sarah was ready. She sidestepped and shoved the dresser into him, sending him sprawling backward into piles of clothes and shoes. He swore under his breath as he picked himself up, his enraged eyes locking onto her. "You thought you could get away? Did you really think you were smarter?"
He crawled forward, dark shadows rendering his features eerie. Sarah's heart thundered. There was no time to celebrate her small victory. She darted toward the door, fueled by desperation and the faint echoes of Eli calling her name. "Eli!" she yelled, pushing through the door, panic slicing through her determination. The hallway stretched endlessly before her, shadows clinging to the corners like lurking specters. "Eli!" She could hear muffled whimpers. They intertwined with the static of terror in the air. She felt like an intruder in her own home. The walls pulsed, closing in, the darkness swallowing the light. "Mom," came a small voice, trembling like a leaf caught in the wind. It was faint, but it was there, alive. "No, no, no," she murmured, running toward the sound. "I'm coming!" But she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her, the breath of something sinister lurking just out of sight. The atmosphere thickened, a palpable cold creeping down her spine. Each step was a race against time, an echo of the danger nipping at her heels. She reached the living room and skidded to a halt. The sight that met her eyes froze her blood in her veins. Eli sat bound in the corner, his wide eyes glistening with unshed tears, a deer caught in headlights. And standing over him was the figure, triumphant and sinister. "Too late, Sarah," he taunted, arms spread wide, a grotesque puppet master. A chill washed over her, drowning out her courage. "No! Get away from him!" His laughter filled the room, a violent crescendo that echoed off the walls like the sinister toll of a bell. As her heart raced and the echoes of despair settled in, Sarah realized this was only the beginning of their twisted nightmare. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, an icy grip clutching her stomach. The room swirled with darkness as the figure stepped closer, shadows bending to his will. Eli's whimpers sliced through the tension, and she surged forward, desperation fueling her every move. "Get away from him!" "You should really watch your tone," he said, his voice oozing mockery. He held up a knife, its blade glinting ominously in the dim light, reflecting the fleeting hope in Sarah's heart. Wouldn't want something bad to happen to the little one. "No!" Sarah shrieked, lunging again. With the frame still in her grip, she swung wildly. The glass caught his arm, but he barely flinched. Instead, he laughed, a sound that twisted in her gut. "Look at you, fighting so hard. It's cute." He took a hard step toward Eli, brandishing the knife. But this isn't a game of strength. It's a game of choice. Her mind raced as the reality sank in. She couldn't let him get closer to Eli. With a fierce determination, Sarah vaulted past piles of furniture, tripping over scattered toys that turned the room into a treacherous battleground. Shadows danced beneath her as if celebrating her every misstep. "Eli, hold on!" she screamed, eyes glued to her son.
He nodded, but his frightened face was a haunting reflection of her fear. The figure took another step, his predatory grin widening. "Time's almost up, Sarah." He leaned down, knife hovering just above Eli's shoulder. "One more step, and I might slice before you reach him." Sarah's heart thundered as the choice hung in the air like smoke. She had to distract him, draw him away from her son. On impulse, she hurled the picture frame against the wall. It shattered loudly, glass flying like a million sharp stars. "Look over there!" she screamed. His distraction was momentary, just long enough. She darted toward Eli, but he swung around, anger flashing in his eyes. "You think you can trick me?" "Just back off!" she shouted, urgency blazing in her throat. As he turned back, she noticed a small vase near Eli's feet. It was heavy ceramic, and without a second thought, she lunged for it, grasping it with both hands, adrenaline surging to replace her fear. "Make your move," he spat, the knife gleaming in the corner of her vision. In that split second, she smashed the vase against the floor. Shards exploded outward in a spray of danger, and in a panic he recoiled. Sarah rushed to Eli, who remained still, bound and terrified. "Hang on, baby, I'll get you free." Chains rattled as she worked, her hands trembling with urgency. With each second that ticked by, the atmosphere grew thicker, like a storm before the flood. "I'll kill him," the figure spat, his voice a low growl, filled with venom. "No!" Sarah shouted, feeling the warmth of her son's hand. She twisted the ropes, panic igniting her movements.
And then there was a loud crash from behind, drawing her attention. The door to the living room burst open, and a figure, tall, cloaked, shadowy, filled the entrance, blocking the light behind. Well, well, what a delightful scene. Her heart sank, the terror multiplied, and in that moment, Sarah realized her fight was only beginning. "Who are you?" she gasped, dread staining her voice. "You'll see." The figure stepped forward, eyes gleaming, and in that instant, Sarah understood the game was far from over. Eli's fingers encircled hers, his grip trembling. "Mom, please." The first figure's laughter echoed around the room, drowning out the sound of her son's fear. A chilling dread settled in the pit of Sarah's stomach. She had fought to save Eli, but she was trapped in a web far more sinister than she could ever have imagined. And in that moment, with shadows spiraling closer, she realized this wasn't just about her anymore. There were darker forces at play, threads of fate weaving a tapestry of terror that was impossible to escape from. As darkness thickened around them, Sarah felt the walls close in, whispering promises of doom. What else was hunting them in the darkness? Would she have the strength to find a way out? The air crackled, thick and oppressive, as the cloaked figure drew closer.
Shadows swayed and merged, battling for dominance, wrapping Sarah in a suffocating embrace. Her pulse raced, each beat echoing in a deafening drum in her ears. "Step aside," the new figure ordered, voice smooth yet chilling, like the whisper of winter winds. The blade in the first figure's hand glinted dangerously, reflecting the sparse light, as he growled, "You're in my way." "Not anymore," the cloaked figure replied, and in an instant there was a whoosh of air. The knife flew from the first figure's grasp, spinning towards the floor. It struck the ground with a clatter, the sound shattering the tension in the air. Sarah gasped, her heart momentarily lightened. But relief was a fleeting ghost. The first figure staggered back, eyes wide with disbelief. "How dare you?" he spat, recovering quickly, rage transforming his features. The menacing joy he once held vanished, replaced by a darker fury. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, holding Eli tightly to her, as if her body could shield him from the chaos surrounding them. Her fingers interlaced with his, a tangible reminder of hope amidst despair. "Just a kind stranger," the newcomer said, tilting his head slightly, his eyes amber and piercing. "But I have no patience for bullies." The atmosphere shifted, tension thickening like fog in a haunted night. As both figures squared off, Sarah felt heat radiating off them, an unseen battle of wills brewing. "Let him go," she said, desperation coating her words. "He's just a child." The first figure scoffed, collecting himself. "And what do you think will happen to you if I let the little brat escape?" "Enough games," the cloaked figure shouted, voice cutting through the air like a knife. "You're playing with forces you don't understand." With blinding speed, he lunged. Sarah yanked Eli to her side, shielding him just as the two figures collided in a turmoil of shadow and fury. The room erupted into chaos, furniture crashing against walls, and the shadows themselves seemed to writhe, twisting like fire. "Stay close," Sarah cried out, her voice trembling in the whirlwind of noise. As they backed away, Eli squeezed her hand tighter, eyes wide with terror, lips trembling. "What's happening?" he whimpered, his small frame shaking. "Just hold on," she reassured him, though fear gripped her heart. They stumbled back, eyes darting between the dueling figures. Light flickered as sparks flew, illuminating grotesque, contorted faces in the chaos. Each glimmer revealed more than just physical blows. It exposed the enormity of a fight laden with supernatural overtones. Suddenly, the clash of bodies stilled, an eerie silence enveloping the room. "Stop this," the cloaked figure demanded, voice low yet commanding. "We can end it here." But the first figure sneered, a delighted relish coloring his expression as he replied, "It's far from over. You know this is only the beginning." Just then, a bone-chilling laugh erupted from the darkness behind them.
Sarah's heart plunged into her stomach. Out of the depths of shadow emerged more faces, pale and hollow, eyes glistening with malevolence. They surrounded Sarah and Eli, forming a circle of doom, an audience to their torment. More of them. Eli's voice was barely above a whisper, filled with fear as he looked at his mother. "Run!" Sarah urged, panic igniting her movements.
She didn't know where to go, but instinct screamed that staying here would doom them both. As she turned, the cloaked figure yelled, "No, you can't escape! They'll find you!" Sarah's heart sank deeper. What were they? What would they do? The shadows pulsed, and she felt cold fingers graze her shoulder, sending a jolt of despair through her veins. The path was blurring, enemies closing in from every side. "Mom!" Eli's voice broke, filled with unrestrained terror. With a sudden surge of determination, she grabbed Eli, ducking low as they darted toward the staircase at the back of the room. But would there be safety above, or just more nightmares waiting in the dark? The darkness swelled behind them, an oppressive weight. "Run!" she screamed, resolve battling despair as they raced into the unknown. What awaited them at the top? More danger, or a fragile chance at survival? The dread settled deeper as they pushed forward. Would they find salvation, or was it already too late? Their feet pounded against the wooden stairs, each step echoing loudly in the stillness, a reminder that they were alive and fleeing. The dim light flickering further up the staircase illuminated swirling dust motes, dancing like lost spirits caught in an eternal waltz. "Mom, what if they catch us?" Eli's voice trembled, breaking through the heavy silence. There was fear in his eyes that twisted Sarah's heart in knots. "We won't let them," she replied, summoning a confidence she didn't feel. They burst onto the landing, their frantic breaths hanging in the air. The hallway stretched before them, dark and foreboding. Shadows danced in the corners, whispering promises of dread. She could sense it, an impending threat creeping closer. Even up here, safety felt as fragile as glass. "Which way?" Eli asked, tugging at her hand, his small fingers feeling cold and clammy against hers. "Anywhere but back," she replied, scanning the eerie doorways. Each one held secrets, some veiled in dust, others shrouded in deeper darkness. Their instincts screamed for movement. Sarah took a deep breath and pulled them toward the door on the left. She turned the knob slowly, heart hammering like a drum, and it creaked open to reveal a cramped room, swallowed by shadows. It smelled musty, like something long dead, and a shiver crept up her spine. In the corner, an old dresser leaned precariously, its drawers slightly ajar. Thoughts darted through her mind. Should they hide or keep running? "Mom!" Eli's voice quivered as he pointed toward the window. Outside, clouds churned, a tempest brewing against the backdrop of an already dimming sky. "Let's just look," Sarah urged, pushing the fear down. They crept into the room, and as she stepped closer to the window, she peered outside. The world beyond was a swirling mass of gray. Sheets of rain drummed against the glass, turning the world into indistinct blurs. "Look!" Eli said, tugging insistently on her sleeve. She turned back, her breath hitching in her throat as the door to the room swung shut with a sharp bang. The force rattled the walls, and the air shifted, heavy with an unmistakable dread. "Mom!" Eli shouted as he retreated. "What's happening?" Before she could answer, whispers filled the room, a cacophony of voices rising and falling like the fury of a storm. Each syllable twisted and coiled around her, creating a visceral sensation of suffocation. "Get down!" she yelled instinctively, pulling Eli to the ground just as the dresser tipped over, crashing to the floor with a deafening bang. The shadows surged, alive with an ancient hunger, writhing as if seeking to consume them. Sarah's heart raced. They had to escape. Instinct took over as she crawled toward the only other door she could see, toward what felt like an inevitable confrontation. Eli clutched her hand tightly, his eyes wide and glistening with fear. "Hold on," she breathed, pushing the door open. Beyond was another hallway, even darker than before, yet she could hear faint thumps growing closer. The shadows beckoned, tempting them to stay, but they had no choice. The moment they crossed the threshold, the whispers crescendoed, drowning out her thoughts. "Join us! Stay forever!" "Mom, I'm scared." "Me too," she confessed, but they pressed on, keeping each footfall deliberate, knowing that hesitation could mean disaster. Without warning, the lights flickered, and a figure materialized at the far end of the hall, tall, draped in darkness, eyes glimmering like pools of despair. Sarah felt her stomach sink as it extended a hand, beckoning them closer. "Come," the voice echoed, soothing yet unbearably chilling. As if against her will, she took a step forward, the fear paddling in her bed like a desperate fish fighting the net. "Mom, no!" Even Eli's shout could barely cut through the growing tempest of desire pulling her deeper into the shadows. Behind them, the whispers morphed, real voices screeching in rage as if clamoring to claim their souls. The closeness of terror slammed into her, threatening to shatter her resolve. "Run back,"
she commanded suddenly, her instincts rich with panic. But as they turned, the door slammed shut behind them, reinforced and locked, leaving them trapped with the all-consuming darkness and the approaching figure. They were running out of time. What would be their fate in this all-consuming shadow? Would they succumb, or could they find a way to escape?
The figure took a step forward, and with it, the shadows seemed to surge, hungry and alive. Sarah's heart thudded against her chest, each beat a reminder of the claustrophobic dread closing in around them. She steeled herself, pulling Eli close, their breaths mingling in the thick, heavy air. "Mom, what do we do?" Eli whispered, his voice barely a murmur, yet it seemed to echo like a siren in the claustrophobic darkness. Just hold on tight," she replied, her mind racing. Every instinct screamed to run, to find a way out, but the very room felt like a trap, pulsating with the voices that begged for their surrender. The figure shifted closer, its face obscured, a mask of shadows blurred and twisted. "You're safe here," the voice crooned, low and inviting, a sickly sweet nectar that drew them inexorably toward it. "Just surrender." Eli shuddered, pressing against her, eyes wide with terror shining like two tiny lamps in the dark. "I don't want to stay, Mom," he cried. Fear dug its claws deeper into her heart, but resolve ignited alongside it. They couldn't stay here. She wouldn't allow it. "Listen to me, Eli," she said, her voice trembling yet firm. "We're getting out. On 3, we run. Do you hear me?" His fervent nod was all the encouragement she needed. 1, 2, 3. They bolted towards the far wall, adrenaline blasting her forward. The figure lunged, its movements a blur, but Sarah felt a surge, a fleeting spark of hope. "Run!" she screamed, and they darted to the right, away from the shadow's grasp. Eli kept up, the wind of their frantic flight whipping around them like a ghostly touch as they raced towards a door down the hallway. But each step felt like they were wading through mud, the whisper shrieking behind them now, a cacophony of rage and desperation. "Come back! Please don't leave us!" Just a few feet away, the door loomed, worn and cracked, but a promise of freedom. She reached for the handle, wrenching it open with all her strength. Then everything froze. A chill gripped her as they stepped through. The room beyond was even darker, filled with an oppressive atmosphere thicker than before. She couldn't see much, but she could smell it, the stench of decay, sharp and sickening. "Mom, what?" Eli's voice tapered off into silence as the heavy door behind them slammed shut again. They were trapped inside another room, and now the shadows seemed to swirl around, a living ink taking form, crescendoing into unbearable anguish. A musty wind whipped past them, carrying with it the dreadful voices that howled for recognition. "No," Sarah breathed. "No, please, no." Eli clutched her leg, trembling. "Are they gone?" "I don't know. I don't know." The turmoil was suffocating, and her mind raced. They couldn't just stay here. The figure had been close earlier. It would follow them, waiting for the moment when they exhausted their will to fight. In the corner of her eye, a glimmer caught her attention.
Something shiny among the shadows. A small table sat wedged against the wall. On it lay an old, rusted key. Its presence was strange and out of place, yet in this nightmare it felt like a lifeline. "Eli, over here!" she urged, her heart pounding as she darted forward. She grabbed the key, feeling its weight pull at her. "Maybe it can unlock something," he said, peering up at her with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Let's find out," she replied, already scanning the room. To the right, another door lurked in the shadows. It was smaller and worn, but had a faint outline of a lock. "Mom, hurry!" Eli urged, glancing over his shoulder as if sensing the shadow's approach. With shaking hands, she pushed the key into the lock. It fit perfectly, and she turned it slowly as dread blossomed in her chest. Would it open a pathway to safety, or was it another trap waiting to ensnare them? The door creaked open just as a gust of icy wind blew past them, causing the air to thicken with an overwhelming sense of despair. The whispers exploded around her, wailing to keep them close, to draw them back. She could even hear her own name being called, twisted and distorted. "Now!" She gripped Eli's hand and pulled him forward, stumbling through the door just as the shadows reached out. What lay beyond was a nightmarish landscape, the shadows morphing into faces, twisted expressions bearing silent screams. "Where are we?" Eli's voice was a shuddering whisper. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving." But as they dashed ahead, another door appeared, yet something shrieked in protest behind them. Was it anger, fear, or something worse? As a new shadow lunged forward, ready to swallow them whole, Sarah realized this might be the end of their desperate flight.
What awaited them on the other side of the door? Would they be free or fall into deeper darkness? The doorway opened onto an expanse that felt like a sepulchre, a vast hollow echoing with their every movement. The ground beneath their feet was uneven, littered with fragments of memories, dilapidated furniture, tarnished trinkets, remnants of lives long extinguished. But Sarah didn't stop to assess the history surrounding them. The shadows were closing in, their whispers now an avalanche of despair. "Keep running, Eli," she urged, and they dashed into the hollow, hearts hammering in a frantic rhythm. Skimming past an overturned chair, Sarah caught glimpses of distorted figures flitting just beyond her vision. Their bodies were cloaked in the consuming darkness, each face morphed into grotesque masks of sorrow and rage. She felt eyes boring into her, searching for weakness. "What are they?" Eli's voice felt like a small spark of fear, pulsing through the intensity around them. "Just shadows," she said, though her heart quivered. "They can't hurt us if we keep moving." They came to a larger room, dimly lit by a flickering bulb that hung by a thread, casting distorted shadows on the peeling wallpaper.
There, in the center, an altar-like structure rose from the floor, its surface cluttered with tarnished objects, rusted blades, cracked photographs, and what looked like dried flowers, fragile tokens of a once-cherished connection, now eerily beautiful in decay. A chill settled in her bones as she traced the outline of a framed picture half hidden beneath the debris. Moving closer, she recoiled. The couple smiling back at her bore an uncanny resemblance to them. Confusion welled inside her as the whispers crescendoed into a wailing chorus, echoing through the void around them. "Mom, please!" Eli tugged at her sleeve. Fear writhed in his eyes. "Let's go, sweetheart." She turned abruptly, shaken, only to find a dark figure blocking their exit, a shadow more pronounced than the others, its shape a hulking silhouette, no longer merely an illusion. There it stood, solid and terrifying, with piercing hollow eyes that seemed to draw the very light from the room. "Stay with us," it crooned, every syllable filled with anguish, as if the walls themselves were crying out, "You belong here." "No!" Sarah shouted, clutching Eli tightly against her, her resolve hardening. "We don't belong to you." The shadows flickered in response, as if stung by her defiance. She felt their desperation pressing in, suffocating, trying to pull her down into the depths. "Mom!" Eli's voice cracked as he pointed. "There's another door!" Shoving past the figure rooted in their path, Sarah raced toward the next exit, adrenaline surging through her veins. The door was smaller, painted in a deep, dark green that seemed to swallow light. She grabbed the handle, yanking it open. As they burst through, cold air slammed into them like a wall. The scene shifted once more. They stumbled onto a long corridor lined with doors, each more unsettling than the last, a labyrinth that seemed to stretch infinitely, claiming it was home to horrors unknown. "No, no, no," Eli gasped, glancing back over his shoulder. "They're coming after us. We can't breathe." A cacophony of screams chased them, voices overlapping into a shrill chorus of despair, and for the first time, Sarah felt her resolve wavering. With every step, she could feel the shadows encroaching closer, threatening to envelop them in their icy grip. "Focus, Eli! Just keep looking forward," she urged, pushing past the terror to summon whatever strength remained. But with a sudden roar, the shadows consolidated, rushing forward as if drawn by the desperation in their hearts. Sarah fumbled, searching for a door that would lead them to safety, when she spotted the glimmer of another keyhole, a flicker of hope in the oppressive darkness. "Here!" She lunged for the door beside her, inserting the key just as the shadows collided against them, almost tangible now, claws reaching. With a swift turn of the key, the door swung wide open, revealing an unseen expanse beyond. But just before they could escape, a chilling voice resonated from behind them, freezing their movements in terror. "Your journey has only just begun." What awaited them in this new, darkness-laden passage? And would they ever find their way back to the light? The darkness wrapped around Sarah and Eli like a cold, damp blanket as they tumbled through the door. A rush of air, sharp and biting, engulfed them, but it felt different from the rest. This space was open, detached from the suffocating shadows that still clawed at their heels. "Where are we?" Eli's voice wavered, bright eyes wide with fear, darting around. "No idea, but we're not turning back," Sarah said firmly, determination igniting in her chest. She squeezed his hand, breathing deeply to steady herself.
The air had a strange electric charge prickling against her skin. They stood at the edge of an unlit cavern, jagged walls looming ominously. "Keep your eyes open, Eli. We have to find a way out. We can do this together." But the cavern was deceptively silent, only the echoes of their breaths reverberating against the damp stone. Shadows danced on the walls, illusions of movement that played tricks on her mind. She stepped forward, leading Eli deeper into the eerie calmness. "No!" a voice hissed behind them, slicing through the stillness. The familiar guttural growl rattled her bones, and she turned instantly, fury igniting anew as the figure emerged from the darkness. "You can't escape." "Leave us alone!" Sarah screamed, holding her ground. But the figure only smirked, its eyes glinting with malice. "You thought you could outrun fate. It has only just begun." Eli clung to her leg, terror-filled eyes wide as the shadows hissed and writhed at their feet, almost alive with anticipation. Sarah knew she needed to act. "Eli, can you run?" she asked, formulating a desperate plan. "I'll follow you," he replied, voice trembling but fierce. "Okay, 1, 2, 3. Without hesitation, she shoved Eli forward and lunged at the figure. "Over here," she shouted, the adrenaline coursing through every vein. The figure turned, eyes narrowing in disdain. "Foolish woman," he spat, lunging toward her. But she did not wait for him. She darted sideways, narrowing the gap between them. Shadows tore at her heels, and she risked a glance back. Eli was sprinting for the ledge. "Go, Eli, go!" With every stride, the air thickened with tension. She could hear Eli's breath, quick and desperate, and her heart thundered in response, fueling her speed. She threw herself into the darkness, dodging the figure's outstretched hands. "Get back here!" The chilling dread wrapped around her throat as she felt a flash of pain at her side, fingers grazing her skin. Sarah stumbled but caught herself, determination igniting a fire within. "You won't take my son."
Eli leapt onto the ledge, tiny hands gripping the rock face. "Mom, hurry!" His voice echoed, a lifeline amidst the chaos. Pushing through the haze of fear, Sarah bounded forward. She skidded to a halt beside Eli, who looked wide-eyed at the chasm before them. "What now?" "There," she pointed, to a narrow path spiraling upward, hidden moments before. "We climb!" Leaving no time for second thoughts, Sarah grabbed Eli, threading her fingers through his as they scrambled up the path. The figure's furious roars echoed behind them, reverberating off the cavern walls like thunder. "Faster, faster!" Sarah urged, scrambling up slick rock, every muscle burning with exertion. The shadows lunged at her heels, shrieks rising like a cacophony of despair. Almost there, they neared the mouth of the tunnel where a slant of pale light beckoned. With one last burst of strength, they climbed through, bursting into light that blinded her momentarily. When her vision cleared, they stumbled onto a sunlit meadow, fresh air flooding her lungs as warmth surrounded them. "Where?" Eli panted, scanning the unfamiliar landscape. Bright flowers painted the emerald grass, gently swaying in the sunlight. "Eli, we made it!" She pulled him into a hug, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "We're safe!" And for a fleeting moment, they stood together, breathing in the fragrance of freedom. But the tranquility was short-lived. Dark clouds loomed overhead, their ominous forms twisting, threatening to blanket the light. "No!" she gasped, panic creeping back. "What are you doing?" The shadows spilled from the cavern, rolling across the meadow like a storm unbound. "Sarah," a chilling voice echoed from the darkness, "we will not be denied. Your struggle is in vain." As the shadows pressed closer, Sarah felt her resolve harden. "Not this time!" She squeezed Eli's hand, her determination solidified with every breath. "We won't let them take us again. We fight together." Eli glanced up, fear replaced with fierce courage. "I'm with you, Mom!" And so they stood, a united front against the encroaching darkness. With each pulse of their hearts they stepped forward, ready to reclaim their destiny. The fight wasn't over, but together they would face whatever emerged from the shadows, their bond fortified by the burden of the past and the promise of hope ahead. And in that moment of unity, Sarah understood. It was not just survival they sought, but the belief in the light that would always flicker, no matter how dark the night became. The figures behind them twisted and swirled, but Sarah and Eli took that first step toward the dawn, knowing they would navigate whatever lay ahead, confronting darkness, grasping at hope, and walking into the light together.
Fill the comments section with your mind-blowing theories and how you felt about this epic conclusion. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who can't miss this incredible ending. Your support matters, and only true fans understand the power of these actions.